Thank you again, Lotte. And thank you, Peter and Martha, for some really interesting presentations. And Martha, I was really listening to what you said about communication after a terror attack, and yeah, I would actually love some feedback on this presentation also afterwards. But it's also important for me to say mine and our role at SLA in this project is urban designers and landscape architects, and we are of course part of a very big team working on this project for the past years in rebuilding the government quarter in Oslo. I will, let me see here. Yeah, so I will go through, I think, yeah, some of the important aspects of the development of the project. There's no doubt that this is a very complex and, yeah, and historically important project. But the government quarter is located just in the heart of Oslo, in between the mountains and the water, and yeah, very central in the city of Oslo. It has, through time, been an area with the historic Norwegian architecture, urban spaces and streets in the middle of Oslo. It's connected to the surroundings, but also has a character of, yeah, of being a little bit closed off. Through time, it's been an area where you could say people and power have been very close. This building is called Høyblokken. This is where the Prime Minister through time has had his office, and it's always been open to walk right through it. Then in 2011, the tragic event happened, and the area was bombed by a terrorist and left the area destroyed. What happened afterwards was, of course, that it was a city and a country in grief. I very much remember the speech that the Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg gave at the time, where he said that our answer is more democracy, more openness, and more humanity, but never naivety. And I really think that these words are very strong guidelines for how this area should be rebuilt, but also just in general how we approach this theme of creating safe and secure cities. It's also a project that can keep us up at night, I have to admit, but when we look at it, what happened after the terror attack was that a whole process started, because instead of just rebuilding what had been damaged, it was decided to create a new government quarter, of course, with respect for the old, but also gathering all the ministries in one government quarter. And this map shows how that decision is, of course, also part of an overall strategic decision about security measures, because now that means that all the ministries will be joined in one neighborhood. It's a way to create a part of the city that needs to be secured and open at the same time, but instead of having too many targets spread around the city, the decision was made to create a coherent neighborhood. It was also decided because then the ministries would have a closer connection, and it will be possible to walk through the area and into the different buildings. But one of the main challenges has been how we help ensure that this area as the democratic center and the symbol of the open and free Norway will be both secure and open and safe and free at the same time. And the work is quite filled with dilemma. So what we ask ourselves and each other is, how does integrated terrorism prevention go hand in hand with open and democratic public spaces? And what we do on the one hand is to make sure that we, of course, apply state-of-the-art security principles, such as creating barriers, but still allowing for people to pass through, ensuring also for eyes on the street, but also looking at how it's possible to, for example, reduce the speed of vehicles into the area. And also something that's really important is how we create a safe neighborhood which is car free, and also see that as something positive, but that we do it in a way so we don't create a barrier around the whole area, but instead create integrated security measurements. I'm going to come back to that a little bit. But that also means that this way of rebuilding is also very much focused on how we can, in a much better way, connect this area to the city in a new way. So a kind of urban repair, and very much also trying to turn this into a positive new transformation of the area, still of course with respect for what has happened. But that also means that we're looking at how we create new connections and how we create attractions in the area, new urban spaces, how we add more city nature and biodiversity and create a good microclimate. So actually approach it also in the same way as we approach any other urban development project. And that means that this is an overview of the plan, where we see how new government buildings, new urban spaces, car-free streets, and a new government park that's going to be developed over the course of the next 7 to 8 years, we imagine. And then one of the last things I will touch upon is how we are working with creating like I said before, creating distance without creating barriers. So this is an inspiration of how integrated security measurements can be hidden in the landscape. And that means that we are working with a new urban landscape. So instead of having in many cities and many urban spaces and streets, we see temporary security measurements as a natural response to the attacks through the last years. And that's of course necessary and important to do, but at the same time it's also important to see how in the future they can be integrated into the fabric of the urban spaces. And that's what we are working on here in the government quarter, that the security measures are integrated in stairs or in water or in the terrain, so that they both function as a security element, but at the same time also create an added value to the experience and to the use of the urban spaces in the future. And that also means that this is an example of how it can look coming into the area, and it's hopefully gonna appear open and inviting, and not like a closed off or fenced off area in the future. And that was it for now. There's a lot more to tell, but I think I will also stop due to the time. Thank you for listening again.